don't do nothing. This is not stuff. This ain't doing nothing.
Oh, wait, there's a guy bringing up trash can with fire. I'm not sure what this is about. Nate, do you see that guy?
And then luckily there's someone telling him to stop.
Police! He's gonna hurl at police! There we go!
And somebody was trying to stop him too.
So the officers seem to be unfazed about it.
They blocking the street, I'm not proud of this ratchet shit y'all doing for real. It ain't got nothing to do with no damn Freddie Gray or no Black Power. Y'all niggas is acting stupid.
Right, that's keep the message right, because the people that you want to hear it are hearing it. They're hearing it. But this nonsense that was going on an hour ago, that ain't gonna work. Right. That ain't going. You're gonna lose the people that you're trying to capture their attention.
The window has been smashed out, and through the window you can see officers are inside the store assessing the damage, assessing what may or may not have been taken. But yeah, the store is not in good shape whatsoever. The main window has been smashed on.
Wow.
Prime Minister, but this was a pretty important issue for us. We can't just leave this to the police. I think there are police departments that have to do some soul searching. I think there's some communities that have to do some soul searching. But I think we as a country have to do some soul searching. This is not new. It's been going on for decades. And without making any excuses for criminal activities that take place in this community, what we also know is that if you have impoverished communities that have been stripped away of opportunity, where children are born into abject poverty, they've got parents often because of substance abuse problems or incarceration or lack of education themselves can't do right by their kids. If it's more likely that those kids end up in jail or dead than that they go to college. In communities where there are no fathers who can provide guidance to young men. Communities where there's no investment and manufacturing has been stripped away. And drugs have flooded the community, and the drug industry ends up being the primary employer for a whole lot of folks. In those environments, if we think that we're just going to send the police to do the dirty work of containing the problems that arise there without, as a nation and as a society, saying what can we do to change those communities, to help lift up those communities and give those kids opportunity, then we're not going to solve this problem. And we'll go through the same cycles of periodic conflicts between the police and communities, and the occasional riots in the streets, and everybody will feign concern until it goes away, and then we go about our business as usual. If we are serious about solving this problem, then we're going to not only have to help the police, we're going to have to think about what can we do, the rest of us, to make sure that we're providing early education to these kids, to make sure that we're reforming our criminal justice system so it's not just a pipeline from schools to prisons, so that we're not rendering men in these communities unemployable because of a felony record for a nonviolent drug offense, that we're making investments so that they can get the training they need to find jobs. That's hard. That requires more than just the occasional news report or task force. And there's a bunch of my agenda that would make a difference right now in that. Now, I'm under no illusion that out of this Congress we're going to get massive investments in urban communities. And so we'll try to find areas where we can make a difference around school reform and around job training and around some investments in infrastructure in these communities, and trying to attract new businesses in. But if we really want to solve the problem, if our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. And we don't just pay attention when a young man gets shot or has his spine snapped. But we're paying attention all the time because we consider those kids our kids, and we think they're important, and they shouldn't be living in poverty and violence. That's how I feel. I think there are a lot of good-meaning people around the country that feel that way, but that kind of political mobilization, I think we haven't seen in quite some time. And what I've tried to do is to promote those ideas that would make a difference, but I think we all understand that politics are rather tough because it's easy to ignore those problems or to treat them just as a law and order issue as opposed to a broader social issue. That was a really long answer, but I felt pretty strongly about it.
Pushed them out of that area. They moved down to the area of North and Pincy, where them and others attacked a police car, broke out the window, stomped on it. I think you have information on that. Very concerned that I had an officer trapped in that vehicle. The officer had removed themselves and had shelters in place in a nearby store. We were able to get resources down there to push that crowd away from that area. They ended up south at Pincy, that's saying in North Street, and you can see that they started to ransack CVS in criminal acts of vandalism and taking of property. We were able to assemble resources from out of town to get up there in a rapid manner. We took that corner back as we sustained Mondawmin Mall and made sure that it was stable. We were able to move those resources down to Pincy from a northern direction, moving southward. We then brought other resources that moved from the south northward to Pincy, and we took that intersection back. We started to push in a westbound direction as we saw more looting taking place just west of that area. As we moved a large contingent by that time, we had pretty close to about 500 to 600 police officers that were moving in that direction. I was very much pleased and surprised that we had ministers that came out with Congressman Elijah Cummings, tried to calm the area and calm the young people in that community that was just totally destroying the places where they have to live. And tomorrow they have to go to those same stores that they tore apart. And those stores that were burnt down and damaged are the same infrastructure that the people have to survive with in that neighborhood in the next month, the next 2 months, next 3 months. After that, we began to have trouble at Lexington Market. We responded approximately about 50 officers, excuse me, it's been a long day, 50 officers to Lexington Market where we secured that and didn't sustain much damage. We then got calls later off of the 1700 block of Monument that we had looting there. We responded multiple units over there to sustain that area. We're seeing a number of small car fires. We're seeing a number of street fires, basically Pennsylvania, Fulton area again, which has been the cornerstone of the problem the vast majority of the day. Those are the key points. I think we're still getting control of the Pensy area. Mondawmin Mall has been secured. We did have break-ins there. We responded officers up there. We have a number of arrests that came out of there. So we have most of the officers that were in the hospital are doing better. I think for the vast majority, the city is calming itself down slowly but surely, other than the car fires and the street fires. When I came down, I think I was reported a fire in the 1700 block of Monument. Suffice it to say, I am extremely disappointed in what has happened in this beautiful city tonight. I'm disappointed in the fact that the damage has been done to these communities. I'm disappointed that we cannot be more responsible in the embarrassment that we have nationwide in our community. This is not protesting. This is not your First Amendment rights. This is just criminal acts doing damage to a community that is challenged in some ways that do not need this and do not need to be harmed in the way that we have today. I am proud of the officers who were out there sustaining rocks and bottles, who were hit in the head, who were sent to the hospital, and their courage of standing tall in light of all the things. I applaud the outside agencies that came to support us, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard County, and State Police. So I sincerely appreciate that support. I look forward to having more support coming tomorrow from around the region. I had put out calls to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. We had to go through the state to get those numbers up, but we're getting the numbers coming, so we're looking forward to that support. We couldn't get officers from D.C. because we have a state-to-state compact and had to go through state police.
How about the National Guard? Those assets will be coming in?
National Guard, they're on the ground now here within our city. What we're going to use them for is holding structures and fixed posts. What you can see is when we go into a location, we start pushing a direction, we need to have fixed posts behind us or they retake the areas that we push out of. So having those number of assets are good and strong. I know I heard a question earlier, did we plan for it? Yes, we planned for it. That wasn't the issue. We just had too many people out there to overcome the numbers that we had to sustain the issue overall.
Differentiate between the student action and the gang threat, the credible threat that was issued earlier?
Can I do what with it?
Separate the two. Are they related or gang connected or not at all?
From what I know, we had Black Guerrilla families, the Bloods and the Crips had a meeting yesterday, validated and verified, which they said at the conclusion of Mr. Gray's funeral day, each group was intended to kill and take out a police officer.
Commissioner, should you have given the protesters, cold outside, Commissioner, should you have given protesters that much room, that much latitude over the last few days, and did that in any way kind of play into this?
I don't think we gave them much room or latitude on Saturday. The protests were peaceful for the vast majority of the time until at 6 o'clock you had a group splinter off and made its way. They didn't get reckless or problematic until they got to the northeast corner of the baseball stadium, to which they started to then act up. We moved resources that were already down in this area to take care of the larger crowd, to address them. We did address them, and we took them to jail. We prepared today for a Mondawmin corridor. We didn't give them room. I was there. I saw our reaction, and I gave them direction to advance on them. They just outnumbered us and outflanked us. We needed to have more resources there.
You have not to respond forcefully or aggressively here?
No, that's not the case. On Saturday, we were giving them space to have the First Amendment rights. When they started breaking windows and doing criminality, that's when we changed our attitude to engage them, to arrest those who were causing harm. What we did today is that we deployed pepper balls because of the bricks and the glass and the stones that were coming in. And so as we did that, it pushed them. But with the Youth for Kids, it started running around in rapid manner, and so we had to adjust to that.
Why wait until tomorrow to enact a curfew?
I'll get to you in a second. I'm sorry.
Updated numbers on the number of officers injured, the number of arrests made.
I don't have the official numbers. I was told there was about 15 officers injured, and out of that 15, there were 6 that were seriously injured. Shock trauma, I went over and I think I saw 6 officers in shock trauma and talked to them and told them how proud I was and how courageous they were to stand tall for our city as a whole. We'll get you the numbers later. I don't have them right now, Colin. I'm sorry. Sir, you were asking a question.
Why wait until tomorrow to enact the curfew?
I think we were just kind of overlapping the curfew with National Guard and their ability to get here. It's one to put a curfew there and not be able to enforce it. So when they come out, we have the capabilities and ability to enforce a curfew that's out there. I'll get right to you, Jane. I'm sorry. One second. I'll get right back to you. We have had shots fired in the Northwest District. We had a commercial robbery that took place. As officers arrived on scene, there was a guy running out of the back, fired multiple shots at officers. No one was hit at this time. I'm sorry, Jane.
These are not outsiders tonight. These were high school students.
These are our Baltimore youthful residents. A number of them came right out of the local high schools there on the other side of Mondamin, started engaging in this. And if you saw on one scene, you had one mother who grabbed their child who had a hood on his head, and she started smacking him on the head because she was so embarrassed. I wish I had more parents that took charge of the kids out there tonight.
When you think about it, it's certain high schools that came out of the mall. Are there any meetings tomorrow with the school officials? I know there's no school tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, I mean, what's the plan to try to deal with this at the school level?
I talked to Dr. Thornton, who runs the school district, last night, knowing that this was going to happen. We talked, when I reached out to school personnel, I was told that they plan to have a teachable moment today. There's no doubt in my mind that they probably engaged the young people to have them not act in the manner in which they did, to which we have young adults here who are 15, 16, 17. They know right from wrong. They're not 2-year-old kids or 3-year-old kids. They had independent actions that they did, and they're going to be responsible for those actions.
Two more questions.
Are you worried that this will get worse tomorrow?
I don't know if it's going to get worse. I think the curfew is going to help us to get the city under control. The extra resources is the biggest issue for us. I know people would compare us to Ferguson. Ferguson is a much smaller city. Baltimore is almost close to about 80 square miles. And when we have multiple areas popping up, we have to have the resources and the numbers. What you saw tonight is that we were pulled so thin, whether at Lexington Market, whether at Pensy in North or at Monument, we had the opposite ends of the city pulling us at the same time. So extra resources here will allow us to get on top of the issues at multiple locations.
The start of the violence connected to the gang threat? That was a question earlier, but we didn't really get a clear. Was the start of the violence connected to that gang
threat?
No,
I don't think that was connected at all. I just think these were youth that coming out of high school, and they thought it was cute to throw cinder blocks at the police department and to address it that way.
Fire related?
The fire at CVS was related to the looting. We don't know that issue, and that's a shame too. You have a center there that is going to make a difference for our elderly, to make a difference for people who are in need, and there it's burned down, and those people work so hard for that. That is just a shame. That is sad.
Your message for tomorrow?
My message is that this is our city, that we have to live here, and that when you destroy your infrastructure, I've seen cities that haven't recovered 50 years later, like the city of Watts, that are still starting to recover. And for those parents who have kids that are out there that came off that campus, take control of your kids. This is our city. Let's make a difference.
This is one of our darkest days as a city, and I know that we're much better than this.
The officers are dealing with some cars that have been lit on fire in the intersection. Bottles are being thrown at them. There's a liquor store that was just lit on fire across the corner from us. There's a baby coming out from the building next door. They're evacuating people.
How are you going to enforce the curfew?
I think we're going to have to go, but thanks for the time.
How are you going to enforce the curfew tomorrow when kids are out of school?
This is absolutely disgusting. Stay the hell home. Go!
They need to have their butts at home. They need to be in their home units with their families studying and doing something with their life. Not out here protesting about something that's not really about nothing.
You looted, you stole medicine from old people and everything. Guys, we're doing this the wrong way.
We were building 60 affordable apartments for senior citizens. I don't know why somebody would do this. I can't fathom nor justify
why this could happen like this.
This is just another example of the sad state of this city at this point.
They do not respect this young man's death.
Or you can hear the woman shout, "I know that's you," before she rips off the teenager's mask. This video, you can imagine, is getting a lot of attention online. Baltimore's police commission even took notice.
And if you saw on one scene, you had one mother who grabbed their child who had a hood on his head, and she started smacking him on the head because she was so embarrassed. I wish I had more parents that took charge of the kids out there tonight.
All of this, of course, came just hours after the funeral of Freddie Gray, who died of severe spinal cord injury while in police custody. His family, Gray's family, denounced the violence, saying, "I want you all to get justice for my son." I'm reading a quote here, but I don't do it like this here. I don't think that's for Freddie. I don't think the violence, I think the violence, she says, is wrong. That was his twin sister, Frederica.
This young man is back again. He has decided that he wants to throw something at officers. The officers are moving in. He's now going to be arrested. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So one person has turned this entire quiet area. We are being sprayed with mace. We are being sprayed with pepper spray. So this calm thing has turned over very quickly. I just got sprayed back in my face. The cops should be able to do this. It definitely does hurt. So you can see how quickly one person can turn this whole thing around. The cops, once they were hit by that
Ryan,
one person,
are you okay?
to spray back into the crowd. It hurts a little bit, but
Ryan, let me cut you off
for a little bit.
Let me cut you off. I want you to be okay and grab some water to you and your crew.
You aren't standing for it. Look at this. Here's just one example. By all accounts, a mother who tracked her son down as cameras were rolling, slapping, smacking him, and pushing him away from the violent crowd. The police commissioner even last night thanked her, saying that he wished more parents took charge of their kids the way she did. And then this.
Go! Step your away.
This happened live on CNN last night. Remarkable images. That's a Vietnam vet, Robert Valentine, who stepped between the police and young rioters. He was shooing away all those people who were, had in their minds to throw things at the cop. He just told them to go.
They need to have their butts at home. They need to be in their home units with their families studying and doing something with their life.
Also, hundreds of pastors and locals marched down the street asking for peace. We're showing you this because it is happening in conjunction with everything that went on, that went badly last night. Now, all the good things that we're showing you doesn't speak to what will happen tonight. That's a totally separate question.
We're building a new senior center, and right now that new senior center is all in total flames. Firefighters are standing back with their ladder trucks, and I need to get close to it. It's so hot.
And Mark, we're seeing those images that you are speaking about. So this was a brand new senior center that had been built by a church?
Yeah, the Southern Baptist Church, Pastor Dr. Dante L. Hickman Sr., the parishioners and worshipers that showed up. Lots of raw emotion. They're crying. Want to know who would do this to their church. They burnt the church bus. It appears that new construction is a total loss. The entire block is burned.
Mark, do you have a sense of just, for our viewers who are watching this around the country and around the world, it's hard to get a sense of how many spots there are where police have been deployed, where there has been trouble. Do you have a sense of it about how many active situations are going on right now?
Well, a colleague and I raced over here from downtown, and we passed many beats on many corner trucks. I haven't seen a TV or reports from my colleagues to the Sun, but it appears all over the city. We passed a couple busloads of officers in riot gear being escorted in a motorcade, so they were going somewhere. Clearly, this isn't slowing down.
And in terms of the response right now at that massive fire, we see a number of fire vehicles. We do see water being poured on it. but it looks like it is still out of control.
It is still out of control. They're not even going nowhere near it. They're just standing back from their ladders reaching the sky.
Just a soldier. And you sort of took it upon yourself to tell those young people to go away.
Yes.
Well, when you're a little bit concerned about your own safety, I mean, there's a lot of bottles and rocks and things.
Well, here's number one. I did 30 years, okay? Came out of Master Sergeant. I've seen more than all this. I've been through the riots already. This right here is not relevant. They need to have their butts at home. They need to be in their home units with their families studying and doing something with their life. Not out here protesting about something that's not really about nothing. They do not respect this young man's death, you know. Now, mama and daddy done lost a child. That could be them. So I'm very pissed.
So what's your name?
Valentine.
And your first name?
Robert.
Robert Valentine. And you're a Vietnam vet?
Yes.
And you just decided to come out here and stand up against these guys?
Yes.
You know, a lot of people would think twice, wouldn't they?
I love my country. I love my charm city. And I'm an American. I'm not black, white, red, or yellow, nothing. I am American.
Are you concerned about what's happening to the community?
Yes.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, the National Guard is now on the streets of Baltimore. The latest aftermath in a series of what have been high-profile confrontations between black men and police officers. And there seems to be growing frustration among African-American leaders that not enough is being done quickly enough. Mark Morial of the Urban League said the U.S. is in a state of emergency of tremendous proportions. The president of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund says we are in the throes of a national crisis. Are we in the throes of a national crisis? What are you prepared to do about it, both in terms of Baltimore and the larger picture? And what do you say to critics who say that since the death of Trayvon Martin, you have not been aggressive enough in your response? And to Prime Minister Abe, how important is a Pacific trade deal to keeping the influence of China in check, both economically and militarily? And do you agree with President Obama when he says that failing to complete a deal will simply further China's influence? Thank you.
Before I answer the question about Baltimore, I'm going to horn in on your question to Prime Minister Abe. I've been very clear that TPP is good for American businesses and American workers, regardless of what China's doing. And we will make the case on the merits as to why it will open up markets for American goods, American exports, and create American jobs. So this is not simply a defensive agreement. This is something that is going to be part and parcel of our broader economic agenda moving forward. And when 95% of the world's markets are outside our shores, we got to make sure that we're out there competing. And I'm confident we can compete. With respect to Baltimore, let me make a couple of points. First, obviously our thoughts continue to be with the family of Freddie Gray. Understandably, they want answers. And DOJ has opened an investigation. It is working with local law enforcement to find out exactly what happened, and I think there should be full transparency and accountability. Second, my thoughts are with the police officers who were injured in last night's disturbances. It underscores that that's a tough job, and we have to keep that in mind. And my hope is that they can heal and get back to work as soon as possible. Point number 3, there's no excuse for the kind of violence that we saw yesterday. It is counterproductive. When individuals get crowbars and start prying open doors to loot, they're not protesting. They're not making a statement. They're stealing. When they burn down a building, they're committing arson. And they're destroying and undermining businesses and opportunities in their own communities that rob jobs and opportunity from people in that area. So it is entirely appropriate that the mayor of Baltimore, who I spoke to yesterday, and the governor, who I spoke to yesterday, work to stop that kind of senseless violence and destruction. That is not a protest. That is not a statement. It's people, a handful of people taking advantage of the situation for their own purposes, and they need to be treated as criminals. Point number 4. The violence that happened yesterday distracted from the fact that you had seen multiple days of peaceful protests that were focused on entirely legitimate concerns of these communities in Baltimore, led by clergy and community leaders, and they were constructive and they were thoughtful, and frankly didn't get that much attention. And one burning building will be looped on television over and over and over again, and the thousands of demonstrators who did it the right way, I think, have been lost in the discussion. The overwhelming majority of the community in Baltimore, I think, have handled this appropriately, expressing real concern and outrage over the possibility that our laws were not applied evenly in the case of Mr. Gray, and that accountability needs to exist. And I think we have to give them credit. My understanding is you've got some of the same organizers now going back into these communities to try to clean up in the aftermath of a handful of protesters, a handful of criminals and thugs who tore up the place. What they were doing, what those community leaders and clergy and others were doing, that is a statement. That's the kind of organizing that needs to take place if we're going to tackle this problem, and they deserve credit for it, and we should be lifting them up. Point number 5, and I've got 6, because this is important. Since Ferguson and the task force that we put together, we have seen too many instances of what appears to be police officers interacting with individuals, primarily African American, often poor, in ways that raise troubling questions. And it comes up, it seems like, once a week now, or once every couple of weeks. And so I think it's pretty understandable why the leaders of civil rights organizations, but more importantly moms and dads across the country, might start saying this is a crisis. What I'd say is this has been a slow rolling crisis. This has been going on for a long time. This is not new. And we shouldn't pretend that it's new. The good news is that perhaps there's some newfound awareness because of social media and video cameras and so forth that there are problems and challenges when it comes to how policing and our laws are applied in certain communities, and we have to pay attention to it and respond. What's also good news is the task force that was made up of law enforcement and community activists that we brought together here in the White House have come up with very constructive, concrete proposals that, if adopted by local communities and by states and by counties, by law enforcement generally, would make a difference. Wouldn't solve every problem, but would make a concrete difference in rebuilding trust and making sure that the overwhelming majority of effective, honest, and fair law enforcement officers, that they're able to do their job better because it will weed out or retrain or put a stop to those handful who may be not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, the challenge for us as the federal government is that we don't run these police forces. I can't federalize every police force in the country and force them to retrain. But what I can do is to start working with them collaboratively so that they can begin this process of change themselves. And we, coming out of the task force that we put together, we're now working with local communities. Department of Justice has just announced a grant program for those jurisdictions that want to purchase body cameras. We are going to be issuing grants for those jurisdictions that are prepared to start trying to implement some of the new training and data collection and other things that can make a difference. And we're going to keep on working with those local jurisdictions so that they can begin to make the changes that are necessary. I think it's going to be important for organizations like the Fraternal Order Police and other police unions and organizations to acknowledge that this is not good for police. We have to own up to the fact that occasionally there are going to be problems here, just as there are in every other occupation. There are some bad politicians who are corrupt. There are folks in the business community or on Wall Street who don't do the right thing. Well, there's some police who aren't doing the right thing. And rather than close ranks, you know, what we've seen is a number of thoughtful police chiefs and commissioners and others recognize they got to get their arms around this thing and work together with the community to solve the problem. And we're committed to facilitating that process. So the heads of our COPS agency that helps with community policing, they're already out in Baltimore. Our head assistant attorney general for the Civil Rights Division is already out in Baltimore. But we're going to be working systematically with every city and jurisdiction around the country to try to help them implement some solutions that we know work. And I'll make my final point. I'm sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, but this is a pretty important issue for us. We can't just leave this to the police. I think there are police departments that have to do some soul searching. I think there's some communities that have to do some soul searching. But I think we as a country have to do some soul searching. This is not new. It's been going on for decades. And without making any excuses for criminal activities that take place in this community, what we also know is that if you have impoverished communities that have been stripped away of opportunity, where children are born into abject poverty, they've got parents often because of substance abuse problems or incarceration or lack of education themselves can't do right by their kids. If it's more likely that those kids end up in jail or dead than that they go to college. In communities where there are no fathers who can provide guidance to young men. Communities where there's no investment and manufacturing has been stripped away. And drugs have flooded the community, and the drug industry ends up being the primary employer for a whole lot of folks. In those environments, if we think that we're just going to send the police to do the dirty work of containing the problems that arise there without, as a nation and as a society, saying what can we do to change those communities, to help lift up those communities and give those kids opportunity, then we're not going to solve this problem. And we'll go through the same cycles of periodic conflicts between the police and communities and the occasional riots in the streets. And everybody will feign concern until it goes away, and then we go about our business as usual. if we are serious about solving this problem, then we're going to not only have to help the police, we're going to have to think about what can we do, the rest of us, to make sure that we're providing early education to these kids, to make sure that we're reforming our criminal justice system so it's not just a pipeline from schools to prisons, so that we're not rendering men in these communities unemployable because of a felony record for a nonviolent drug offense, that we're making investments so that they can get the training they need to find jobs. That's hard. That requires more than just the occasional news report or task force. And there's a bunch of my agenda that would make a difference right now in that. Now, I'm under no illusion that out of this Congress we're going to get massive investments in urban communities. And so we'll try to find areas where we can make a difference around school reform and around job training and around some investments in infrastructure in these communities, and trying to attract new businesses in. But if we really want to solve the problem, if our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. And we don't just pay attention when a young man gets shot or has his spine snapped. We're paying attention all the time because we consider those kids our kids, and we think they're important, and they shouldn't be living in poverty and violence. That's how I feel. I think there are a lot of good-meaning people around the country that feel that way, but that kind of political mobilization, I think we haven't seen in quite some time. And what I've tried to do is to promote those ideas that would make a difference, but I think we all understand that the politics of that are tough because it's easy to ignore those problems or to treat them just as a law and order issue as opposed to a broader social issue. That was a really long answer, but I felt pretty strongly about it.